Hello, hello, you fabulous interior design professionals. Welcome to Business of Design. I'm Kimberley Seldon. We are the OG podcast where we talk about building a business and a life that is not just beautiful, but sustainable, profitable, and aligned with who you really are. Um, as I said, I am an interior design professional. That's what I do full time. So believe me when I tell you, I understand the struggle as creatives is real, even sometimes when we don't want to admit it. This is episode 442, and I'm just going to talk about my own personal shift from hustle, constant hustle, to sustainability. I thought that would be a good conversation to have. How do you shift from that hustle mindset, which you got to have, to a mindset that's more about sustainable and building a business that supports you? Now, I want to start by saying if you're hustling, you're probably working super long hours, you're juggling too many clients, you might be feeling like you're constantly on the edge of burnout, then this episode is for you. And I can say this with such clarity that it's not your fault. The hustle mentality is baked into the creative world, and it really hits us in interior design. You hear people say, "Oh yeah, well you just have to pay your dues, and don't worry, you'll rest when you've made it." Or my favorite, "If you love what you do, you're just never working, right? It's just a joy and a passion in your life." And yet the reality is we are working. We're working really, really hard and maybe too hard. And at some point, passion starts to feel, at least for me, started to feel a bit more like it was pressure. I've certainly been there. I know what it looks like. I felt it in my bones. And that's what we're going to talk about on this episode. This episode is brought to you by Aquavado and the House of Roll Studio in Toronto. Aquavado is a trade-focused plumbing showroom designed to support interior designers like us with expert product guidance, educational support, and concierge-level service. Inside, the House of Roll Studio has curated selections of Perrin & Rowe, Roll, Shaw's, Victoria and Albert, Emtech, and Schwab. On Tuesday, October 7th, House of Roll Studio will host studio sessions for designers looking to build a social media strategy that will target ideal clients and build brand equity. The panel features Tiffany Lee, Paris McKenna, Olivia Beautry, and Chelsea Mazur, 4 women who've grown strong, distinctive brands from humble beginnings by using social media with clarity, consistency, and purpose. Learn more and RSVP at aquavado.com/designers. That's AQUAVATO.com/designers. And BOD listeners, you can use the promo code BODStudio25 to get 25% off registration. Enter the code at checkout when registering for any studio sessions event. All right, so let's start with today's topic, the shift from hustle to sustainability. Let's just talk about what is the hustle mindset, right? We'll define it really quickly. So the hustle mindset is rooted in this belief that your value comes from productivity, that is baked into my bones, that in order to succeed, I have to constantly grind. I have to take on more. I have to say yes to all the things, and I have to keep pushing, even if it means sacrificing other things that are important, like, rest and family time and time with friends and creativity, all of those things. It's almost like, for me anyway, and hopefully I always feel like we're one and the same person, so hopefully you can relate, but it almost feels like it's a badge of honor in this industry to just be overwhelmed and overworked. But I have found that it comes at a cost. And the biggest problem in terms of a business is hustling doesn't scale. You cannot build a business that sustains you if it's constantly drains you. So what the heck is the alternative then? So I was thinking about this and I thought, the alternative is sustainability, not just in the materials or design choices, but in the way that you run your business, in the way that you protect your energy or don't, the way that you protect other resources like time and money. A sustainable mindset might say, I can still kill it and thrive without burning out. Or I can charge a reasonable amount of money or even a really good sum of money and still feel creatively fulfilled. And it says things like rest is productive, boundaries are essential, and systems are smart. It means that building a business that can grow without you being involved in every single step is possible and is actually the goal. And really, most importantly, it's about making intentional choices rather than reactive ones, like, oh, I don't have enough clients, so what am I going to do? It's more about planning ahead to make sure that the pipeline is always full, etc. The name of the episode is Shifting from Hustle to Sustainability. So I want to talk a little bit about shifting mindset. And I know I'll speak for myself. I always think when people are going to talk about mindset, I think, oh, yada, yada, woo, woo. I don't need that. I need like hardcore business. But the fact of the matter is, my mindset is not abstract. It's a very real character in my life. And when I need to shift from hustle to sustainability, it doesn't happen overnight. I don't just flip a switch, but I do have to start asking myself better questions rather than just forging ahead as if everything feels normal, if that makes sense. So, for example, instead of, how am I going to squeeze in one more project? I'm already exhausted. I'm already overwhelmed. Should I even take this on? How am I going to squeeze that in? I might ask myself instead, what is the cost? Physical, emotional, spiritual. What is the cost of saying yes to this project right now? Right? Or instead of what I'll typically feel like I'm thinking, which is how am I going to keep up with everyone else? Everyone else looks like they're killing it out there. They're on TikTok and Instagram and they've got millions of followers and they're just always so adorable. How am I going to keep up with everybody? If I'm thinking in a sustainable mindset, instead I'm asking myself, what feels good for me? What kind of business feels right for me if I didn't have to think about comparing myself to anybody else in the whole world, right? And instead of like, how am I going to make money? Which is, I think we all want to think about money, but I also want to think, how can I make money with less stress and with more alignment to my true value, my core values, and how I feel about myself, if that makes sense. So for me, those are the kinds of shifts that I'm looking for when I start to feel myself getting burnt out. So I thought I'd talk about in this episode today a few of the red flags for me that point at the fact that I might be hustling a bit too much. Some of the key mind shifts that helped me and my clients, by the way, build a more sustainable design business because I have to get them invested in this idea as well. Some simple strategies that have helped me create space in my life and set boundaries and build profit without overworking. And how, I began to think of myself less as a creative person and more like the CEO of a company. So not just a designer for hire. I know that for myself, when I was ready to stop spinning because the burnout felt so close, it was a little scary, but it didn't take long for me to change my kind of thinking and move into a new chapter, I guess you would say. So let's talk about some of the red flags. So for me, these are for me. Hopefully you can relate. I find myself equating somehow being busy or productive with being successful. If I'm at a party and somebody says, "How are you?" and I say, "I'm crazy busy," that's usually a pretty good sign that I'm off the rails and I don't know where I am. Um, I often used to say that with kind of a mixture of pride, and it's like, "Oh, my clients, I have so many. I'm just so busy. You can't imagine." But the truth is, there has to be for me, there's fear beneath that. If I stop running as fast as I can, will it all disappear? And the other really truly important thing for me to remember is that being busy doesn't mean I'm being profitable. I can be productive all day, straightening my files and renaming things and putting pretty color folders in the office and cleaning up Dropbox. That is not profitability. So that's one red flag, the idea that I kind of over equate being busy with being successful. Another red flag is when I start to feel guilty when I'm not working or I'm not productive enough. Like, are you kidding me? On a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday when I'm thinking like, "Oh, what did I get done today?" That tells me that I am really off the rail. It is okay to be lazy and fall behind and take weekends off. I don't have to check emails all the time. I don't have to be the person who answers every question in the office, right? So that's a big one for me. And another thing that shows up for me, at least, is I will say yes to things I know are not my heart's content out of fear of missing out on something. And that's not a strategy, right? Saying yes to something because I'm afraid that it's going to disappear is not strategy. So I really don't want to take on clients that aren't aligned with me, either in how we're going to react to each other or relate to each other, and or in how the project is going to turn out. And having said that, I always like to acknowledge that if you just don't have enough work and you need money, of course you're going to take every project, because I'm not a fool. When I needed to pay the rent, I took projects. But as soon as you can get to a place where you can have a little bit more of a strategic mindset, you can relax the hustle just a little bit, I guess, or at least it doesn't have to be hustle just for the sake of hustle, right? Some of the things that help me shift my thinking, from, for example, I have to do it all. That was a really big one. It's my name on the door. If it's important, I'm the person who should be doing it. When I looked at that, I thought, first of all, that is a person whose ego is out of control. I am not the best person at all tasks. I'm really not. And I remember years and years ago hearing from Bruce Coxon, who was on Shark Tank, and he said, if somebody else that you can hire can do the thing 80% as well as you can, let them do it. And that was really important. So I wanted to shift my thinking from I have to do all things to I am going to do those things that bring me joy and make a significant impact to profitability. Those are my parameters. It has to bring me joy, and it has to impact profitability in a big way. And everything else can be delegated and managed without me being the person who's in charge of it, if I will. Another mindset shift for me was this idea that more clients equals more success, when in fact, more clients sometimes just led to more burnout and less profitability. So instead of thinking about more clients equals success, I began to think about more margin equals more success. Deeper discounts from my suppliers, greater overhead and markup toward my clients. That made I actually could feel immediately how good that was and how healthy that was. Profit is way more important than gross revenue. There's just no question about it. So I need to focus on keeping my rates sharp and high because I'm providing an expensive, luxurious service, and improving my process so those rates seem justified or are justified, and then being strategic, taking on fewer but better projects all the time. And a final shift, I guess, for me came where I used to think I work for these people, I work for that person. Instead, now I think I'm going to partner with my clients. I'm not some kind of a, I don't know, design vending machine where you throw a quarter in and I spit out a color for the ceiling, which is a funny little email I got this week from a former client years and years ago. And they haven't had enough money to take on another project, but they were lovely. I really like them. I got an email asking what color I should paint a ceiling when they're decorating a room on their own. And that was like, that felt like that I'm a designer vending machine. And I just said, listen, if you want to set up a consultation, happy to help you. Otherwise, you've gone this far on your own and you're just going to have to follow your instincts. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spit out answers like a trick pony. I want to be the lead on projects. I want to be the expert on projects. And that means that sometimes I have to set those boundaries that feel uncomfortable, and I have to trust the process that I've set up, and I have to let go of micromanaging. So all of those things. Some things to think about if you find that you're too frequently in hustle mode and not often enough in sustainability mode. So for some companies, I don't do this, but I don't not like this. Let's put it this way. For some companies, the idea of creating a minimum project standard, some baseline for project size, for budget, for creative alignment, all of that can prevent the exhausting work of doing intake calls with people who don't really align. For me, rather than a minimum cost, the line in the sand that we came up with years ago that works really well for us is, will we be able to photograph this project? And if the answer is no, I'm probably going to say no to the project. And why would that be the case? It would be the client who wants to keep most of what they have, or they hired someone else first and it didn't go well, and now they just want us to fix it, but a little fixing isn't going to be enough. So that's a minimum project standard for me. Am I going to be able to photograph this project? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, I probably want the job. Another strategy that was super helpful to me is clearly defining design hours. It used to be that I was willing to meet clients on weekends and evenings because that was what was convenient for them. But you know what? That is not when I do my best work. And that means that my design hours aren't necessarily Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They might be Tuesday to Thursday, 10 till 3. And I get more work done when I more narrowly define the amount of time I'm willing to work than I do when I just have these open-ended times. In my office, I have other people who might work for longer hours, but I don't do that anymore. Another strategy that can be helpful, you can create packages that can be helpful, especially when business is slow. I remember in 2008, which was like 1,000 years ago now, of course, we created a 20-hour package, and then we came up with a 50-hour package. And that was really good because clients at that point were a little bit shy about spending an unlimited amount of money, and they wanted kind of a fixed fee package that worked for them. A value-based fee works really well if, and this is just, I'm begging you to hear this part, if all of your systems are in place and you are fast and efficient at what you do, and you can actually charge some number and then work fewer hours than would constitute that number. And we got better at flat fee pricing when we really started tracking every second, and then we pushed people to be able to do each task faster. I mean, that was really important to us, and that seemed to really transform our office life, I would say. And then another strategy that I live by is batching tasks or blocking calendar time. So I no longer answer emails all day long, every day. I block time in my calendar. I block time in my calendar for sourcing specific things for clients. I block time in my calendar for HR if it has to happen. I batch those tasks and I don't do it in between. And so if it's a Thursday and somebody wants an HR conversation, we have it on Tuesday. I don't drop everything and do it right then. It's scheduled for Tuesday, unless obviously it's like urgent, someone's leaving, in which case that's a different story. In terms of building a CEO mindset, that really took practice, but you guys have heard me say this a million times. Reading my contract line by line was essential. It's just absolutely so important for me to understand the service I provided and how I provided it, what were the boundaries, and what did it cost. Once I had those systems in place, then I could design a business just like you design a room, right? With intention, where functionality mattered and flow mattered. And I was able to delegate because I had all my systems written out. As the CEO of the company, I know it's not my job to have the most emails in my inbox, but it is my job to review my numbers with regularity and make sure that I'm hitting my targets. It is my job to build assets for my team to make sure that the systems are strong, that everything is on brand, that the client experience is really blowing my clients away, right? It's also my job as a CEO to say no to projects that don't serve us, that are going to be more exhausting than they're worth. The CEO doesn't have to do all the things, but should in fact make sure that everybody is able to do the things that are required in a safe and comfortable space, I guess. A few years ago, I found myself really in burnout. We had just finished this project. It was a beautiful house, and I was sitting on the client's floor. They hadn't come in for the big reveal yet, but we had just finished everything. I've got this amazing custom millwork behind me, and I remember this like really expensive hand knotted carpet underneath me. And I laid on the floor and I thought, I don't ever want to do this again, which is crazy because one of my favorite things in the whole world is the styling process and pulling it all together before the big reveal. It wasn't the project, it wasn't the client, it wasn't the space, it wasn't who I was working with. I was just burnt out. It was the stress of working too many hours for too long and always chasing the next goalpost, rarely taking time to celebrate the wins. It just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And I realized at that point that I was going to have to make these big, big changes. And, to be honest, one of the biggest changes I made was this idea of blocking out time in my calendar. Initially, I remember it's just this like word bubbles of these mapped out time to do design work, time to do administration things, like review everyone's hours, and just really thinking that if it didn't fit in this bubble and the bubbles I had made for myself, it was going to have to go to somebody else. The other thing I did when I really burnt out is I raised my rates pretty significantly. And I did that because, at the point that you're taking on so many projects and you're so busy with work, that's actually the time you want to raise your rates. And I gave myself at that point like kind of a whopping 40% raise. And I was pretty scared about it. You know what? I didn't miss a beat, and you won't either. So resist the temptation to lower your fees if you're slow. Instead, work on the strategy of your business, work on your business, build your systems, raise your rates, and use your rate as like fish bait that's going to attract the perfect client, if you will. And, I can't say enough about streamlined process and then educating my clients about how that process works and why it's in their best interest that we follow along with that. And then finally, it really is my job as well to protect my energy, to make sure that I'm getting to my yoga, I'm getting to Pilates, I'm getting to all the things that help me clear space in my mind so I have like that healthy, good energy where I'm ready to do my best work on behalf of clients. Burnout doesn't always look like a breakdown. For me, it happens quietly. It's kind of more like self-loathing and the feeling that I want to burn everything to the ground and start something new. So that's also a sign of burnout for me. Sustainable a sustainable business is one that I feel like I'm in the zone more than not, that I could do this forever because I'm feeling good about what I've done on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And when I am protecting my energy, I'm protecting my time, I'm protecting my resources, that's not selfish. That is actually allowing me to create space for creativity, to create space for the kind of energy I want to have between me and my team, and to build the kind of business um, that I dreamed about when I first started, right? When I first started, I dreamed about having money. I dreamed about having great clients. In fact, on the weekend, I got invited to a client's house, a former client's house. We haven't done a project for them in a few years, for a game night. And we played, some kind of dominoes, crazy dominoes game. And oh my gosh, it was so fun. And she had a really good friend there. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe that's somebody I'm going to work with in future, her friend. We really hit it off. So that can't happen. Those kinds of relationships don't happen when I'm living on the edge and just riding the fine line of burnout, I guess, is what I will say. So think about it. Am I being a little too hustle mindset? Do I need to think instead more about protecting my energy, having stronger boundaries, preparing my staff so I can delegate more, and allow myself to think instead about how am I going to build that sustainable business that I'm excited about and feel empowered about? So anyway, for what it's worth, if you're suffering from burnout right now or your hustle mindset is wearing you out, we understand. We really do. Take a deep breath. It's just decorating. It's just renovating. This is not kidney surgery. We're not saving lives over here. We make lives better, but we don't save lives. So take a beat, figure out what's going on, and know that you can make changes when you're ready, because I did, and so many others have. You can too. We're really glad you're here. Thanks for being here.